Hey friends, and welcome to Mom Talk Maryland. I'm your host, Claire Duarte, founder of the Columbia Mom, and this is your spot for real conversations, local love, and a whole lot of community. Whether you're folding laundry, running errands, or hiding in your car for some peace and quiet, let's dive in. I'm so glad you're finally here.
I'm happy.
We made it happen.
We did.
Or we got out of the chat. Was that what they call it?
We made it out of the chat.
We made it out of the chat.
But we've known each other for a while.
I know.
Yeah.
I was just telling a friend about that. Because we'll get into that. You know what I mean? How I met you just about a year ago. And I forget I was there with Jill, and I can't remember if I was with just her or another team member. And I'd come in to Walrus to have lunch, but we were also doing a business meeting. And I don't remember if I don't know. They were like, "Oh, I'll bring out the chef, or he's going to do some cool things, whatever." And sure. I literally had never met you.
Well, I didn't know that Jill was even in there until I looked out, and they told me they were like, "Hey, there's an influencer here. Do you mind doing something special?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So I looked out because I wanted to come meet you and say hello, and then I saw that you were with Jill, and I realized the world is small. And
that's so funny. I know, and I'd been coming in and out because I knew the manager there, which is so funny, but.
Yeah.
All right, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place today. I have on here Ashish Alfred, and I'm so excited that I grabbed you, probably the small little window that you're in this location, so I'm thrilled. Because, you've got such a cool story, which I'm excited to talk about, and I was going back and forth with you. I was like, what do I want to talk about today? We can, obviously we have tons of moms and women that love tuning in and following the content, but I didn't want to just I don't know, talk about food. When I get on here, what I love is getting to talk to people, and just hear your stories. I love an origin story, you know what I mean? I've learned about your family's business, and I think you have such a really cool story, which is why when Insta started following you, because this man is so cool, look at all this shit he's doing. But with that, I know you've had, just like all of us, your shares of ups and downs.
Sure.
And this is kind of why I sort of went with this theme of seasons and flavors of life, well, we can, so I was hoping we can kind of shake out everything from just, life, business, what you're up to now. But without further ado, let me hand it over to you and tell us a little bit about yourself and your history.
Sure. So everybody knows me I'm Chef Ashish Alfred. Everybody knows me mainly for my restaurant, Duck Duck Goose, which we had up until just a little bit over a year ago. We had 3. We had Bethesda, Baltimore, DC.
I've been to the DC one again years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, I've been on TV a little bit. A little bit.
Yeah.
Most recently, I hosted a few episodes of Bar Rescue for John Tapper, which was a lot of fun. And lately, I've been traveling and consulting and cooking and content creating and everything around food and hospitality that I can think of doing.
Yeah.
And I'm big in the wellness space too, so they don't mental health.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. So, okay, before we go forward, take us back. I don't know, what made you, I'm just kind of curious going to real origin, what made you interested or get interested in food and cooking?
Sure. There was I say this all the time. I think that I was really good at it because there was I didn't really have any airs about me when it came to cooking. For me, it was a job. I got into it because I really sucked at everything else. And I needed, being that I was from an Indian family, I needed a piece of paper that said I knew how to do something. Something could have been underwater basket weaving. But
But you were well.
Somebody smarter than me had to give me a piece of paper that I could give to my parents that said, hey, somebody has blessed me and said I know how to do something.
Yeah.
So I get to culinary school with no real passion for cooking, no real, none of that culinary je ne sais quoi.
Yeah.
I get there and I fall in love with the process of putting one foot in front of the other, one thing after the next, having things in place, being organized. And that's what set it off for me. It was once I got there, then I figured it out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Wait, quick question. So I'm the queen of we're going to be, doing side journeys throughout this whole thing. Yeah. Well, when you said one foot in front of the other and being organized, were you like that prior to culinary school? Were you always really organized or did you realize you kind of got into that environment and you were this makes sense. Now I know how to execute.
So the latter for sure.
Okay.
So I never really had that like structure. I was never able to do it for myself. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't organize my folder. I was the kid like whose backpack you turn it upside down, a hamster's gonna fall out along with homework from 3 weeks ago.
Exactly. Right.
So it was nice to go and almost be forced into an environment where like things just had to be a certain way.
Right.
And it took the thinking out of it for me. So I had to show up to a certain place at a certain time, do what was asked of me, do exactly how much was asked of me, and that was really important for me. That structure in a lot of ways saved my life. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm not gonna project onto you or make assumptions about you. I know for me, obviously a mom and stuff like that, like better for less, like mostly self-diagnosed ADD, but I have been working with my therapist for a long time. But I fully agree. I feel like I have a lot of similarities or connection with that too, of like even starting this business. Like, I mean, yeah, sure, I've been a little bit more of like a type B person myself. Like I need that flexibility and spontaneity in life, but I might not be the most excellent about organizing, but I know I need it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I think when you're thrown into, you're running your own business, you're like, oh my God, I have to. And it's crazy how you can kind of go into this world of hyper focusing when obviously it's something you're passionate about, but like you realize how much all of those things are important.
Well, in the kitchen especially, I mean, you won't make it through. I don't care if you're cooking at Taco Bell or 3 Michelin star, wherever, you will not make it through unless you are organized.
Yeah.
It can, so like when I said, like it really forced me to learn to like regiment my life. We call it, in French, it's called mise en place. So to put things in place.
Yeah.
And if it's the code by which cooks live by.
Yeah.
So it's like my olive oil lives in the same place, my salt, my pepper, my shallots, my whatever else. And I fortunately was able to like extrapolate that across the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But yes, just agreeing with you.
Right. No, I agree, and I love that sentiment too. And funny enough, obviously, you'll tell us about your recent adventures, like that. I took French for what 4 years in high school, and I love that. And then I met my husband, who's Latino. You know, so I was like, I didn't use a lick of it, but you know, that's again also how it goes.
Where's your husband from?
Well, he was born here, but he's from his family's from Honduras.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
one of my really good friends in high school growing up, his mother she worked at the World Bank, but she was like very high up in politics in Honduras. So she went back and forth all the time.
Wild.
And he's now a chef there.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, small world.
All those small world connections, right? Okay, well, this is actually kind of like the perfect segue. Oh, shoot, this is where I always get stuck. I want to ask this question, but then I also wanted to go back to something else you said earlier. I'm going to move forward with this one because we'll keep going back and forth. So, all right. So as a chef, you intuitively understand timing, like when someone needs more heat, when to slow down, when to let flavors develop. When you look at your life and career, how have you learned to read like the timing of a season, and how do you know it's time to push, pivot, pause, or completely start over?
Sure. I think the most valuable lesson for a chef to learn is to taste your own food, to stop periodically and assess what you're doing, to stop periodically and just check in.
Wow.
And I think that the biggest mistakes I've made in my career are when I checked in and I ignored it, or and the biggest successes also are like when I checked in and like things felt good. So what am I trying to say? Let me back up a little bit.
Trust me, I'm running with you. I feel it. I hear it.
I think that as a chef, you learn you kind of check your work as you go, and younger chefs don't, because younger chefs, they have a little bit of pride, a little bit of ego, and they're rushing, because they're trying to figure things out. As I've gotten older and I've matured in my career and in my life, I have learned to just take a second.
Yeah.
There's an interview that I think it's Tom Hanks that was interviewed, and he goes, "When things are going really good, just give it a second. Damn. When things are going really bad, just give it a second." Same thing with cooking. We reduce a sauce for sometimes 4 hours, 6 hours.
Right.
If it tastes really good 2 hours in, probably not going to taste that great when you've reduced it for another 2 or 3 hours to get it to where you want it to be. So it's time to start making adjustments. So, like I said, in my life, both professionally and personally, I've learned to just take a second, see what's going on around me. Can I fix things? Can I make things different? What can I do to like help my outcome come out a little bit better?
Oh my God.
And conversely, like whenever things have gone really shitty for me, it's when like I was like, nah, I got this. Hold my beer.
Yeah. I mean, I can very personally relate to that. I mean, personally and professionally this year with like so many, just like you said, highs and lows, right? I mean, I think especially true in business. And obviously, like for me, like I'm a newer, younger business, only being in like 3 years. I feel like I'm, learning all the things, right? So you're right. I think for me too, like it's always easy to kind of like pause when things are maybe good. But I think it's in that same breath, I was also gonna say like at the third option was like sometimes even when you do pause or like you said, like try your food, I feel like there's been times where I'm like, I still ignore it.
Sure.
Even with you like, this could be questionable, but you keep marching.
Yeah.
And those are the times I've realized, I've made some mistakes.
But you learn from it.
Yeah.
But you learn from it.
Yeah. No, it's so true.
I can say every bad decision that I've made, as a chef at least, I knew. And if you ask a lot of chefs too, like when something goes out of the kitchen and then 2 minutes later the waiter's walking it back with their tail between their legs, as a chef, usually if you're good, you almost always knew that you shouldn't have sent it.
Yeah.
Something it was a little bit overcooked. It was a little bit oversalted. It wasn't, whatever it might be. A lot of times, good chefs, they know.
Of course. And obviously the metaphor that we're here using, it's not just chefs, right?
Sure.
Like, I mean, in lessons in life and business, I mean, like the year that we're facing this year with, especially in our area in economics here in the DMV, it's, pretty rough. So, I mean, in one sense, I say we're like learning business lessons, but we're also being forced in a wild vacuum situation. So we're all having to make lots of decisions, but yeah, no, I think that's so true. Okay, wait. I'm going back to the question that I was thinking of earlier. So obviously there was a big thing, we don't have to go through the whole, story from like culinary school to whatever, but how did Duck Duck Goose come about? I'm just curious. I want to know about that, and then I also want to know about Bar Rescue.
Sure. Yeah. Duck Duck Goose came about. It drew heavily on some of the restaurants that I worked in New York City, drew heavily on the restaurants that I loved in New York City. And I thought there was a market for it, and there was. There was a market for it here. I opened my first one in 2014. And from 2014 to 2024, I had accumulated 3 of them. Wow. So over the course of about 10 years. I opened 3 of these things, and it was great. We got great reviews while we were open. It was little French. They were all little French brasseries. They were, wherever we opened one, it was really well reviewed, really well received. But kind of like we just talked about, I wanted too much too fast. Yeah. So I kept opening and kept opening and kept opening. And I didn't listen to myself when that little still small voice was like, hey, just slow down. Just give it a second. Like, let this develop. And because I thought that, I don't know, it almost, when I look back on it, I don't know if I thought I was running out of time, or I felt like I had to keep doing things to like stay relevant, or I just didn't have the ability to settle. But I mean, listen, you live, you learn. I worked with some of the most amazing people I have ever met in my life. I accomplished things in a really short period of time that I never thought possible for me. Right. And the best part of it is it set up a pedestal for me to go on and do other things. Exactly. Yeah. And I love and can appreciate all that too, because I think, again, I feel like being on the other side of the spectrum of being like a new young entrepreneur, like I feel the same way. It's easy to get really excited. Not just when things are good, but it's like, things are good and you're growing, and like the world is seeing that. It's not that you're chasing praise, because that's not what it is, but you like all of a sudden, like, I know we were talking about like, I mean, I'm still constantly working on that. That feeling of like, once you maybe have, maybe come over that imposter syndrome to be like, okay, now not only am I here, like I can recognize I'm here, I deserve the place, and I'm good at it, and people are receiving that and acknowledge that. You're like, oh, all of a sudden you feel much more capable than before, and it's not a false sense of that. You're just like, wow. Then so it's kind of like then it becomes like, well, then why not? Why not?
keep going, keep growing, because like, not that it's like this invincible feeling of like I can do anything, but it's just like, well, I mean, one, it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling to be like, my work, I'm good at what I do. My work is doing well.
Sure.
And, it feels good to kind of keep creating, because we're creatives essentially in this, whether it's food, whether it's content, whether it's art, you know what I mean? I think we kind of thrive off of that.
And I think, to piggyback off what you said about imposter syndrome, I think that for me in my career, that was really dangerous for me.
Yeah.
Because I think when, as a chef, and a lot of us chefs deal with imposter syndrome, we pick ourselves apart worse than any critic is going to pick us apart.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that I kept opening restaurants because one, I really loved to do it. I was good at doing it.
Right.
The restaurants were received really well, but I was like, if I keep opening restaurants, then it'll cover up the fact that maybe I'm not the best chef, or maybe I'm not the best this.
Right.
Like I was almost looking for some sort of validation
Yes.
out of it. And like I said, I mean, you live, you learn.
Right. No, I mean, and that's how I feel too. Like we can sit here and hash out all of the, mistakes that we've made along the way in business, but, a business, consultant that I work with, he, God bless him and his patience with me too. But he was like, hindsight's 2020, like all we can do is make the plan and the action forward, and we're just going to learn from it. And that's okay. Because at the end of the day, and this is where, pulling myself out of like any guilt and shame and stuff like that. It's like, because you can't stay there. You can't be productive if you are still actively having guilt and shame upon yourself. So, it's like giving myself a little bit of that grace to be like, okay, yes, you maybe made mistakes. I think that feels like a hard word. Like you were making what you thought were the best choices or decisions at the time, even if they clearly weren't optimal.
Yeah, sure.
In that time, in that mindset, in that situation, and, because that's the only way we grow and move on, if we can release.
Sure. And there's so much that you learn, like anybody that would ask me, when I consult now, I travel now, I still cook, I'm still involved with restaurants now, and if anybody said to me, well, this happened in your career and that happened in your career, I would lean in very calmly and I would say, do you think that makes me more or less dangerous? Mm-hmm. Do you think that I learned more from kind of doing this, or would I have learned more from just doing this?
I don't know if you were asking me, I'm going to answer, but I know you were putting that out. I mean, again, obviously from my own lived experience, I absolutely think if you've gone through peaks and valleys, like you have the mental and emotional capacity to keep fighting.
For sure.
That's like, because if you've hit, both, it's great. Anybody can feel the high, but if you've felt the low and been burned and can come out of that, to me, like, whatever you do next is just going to be.
And anybody who I have in my career as a chef, as an entrepreneur, anybody who I have immense respect for has been in a position that was awful. Has been in a position where they've lost it all, had to figure it all back out. I think that the universe doesn't give you really great, remarkable success unless it has seen you taste really great, remarkable failure. Because how then can you appreciate it?
Right.
My father used to say, I used to pick myself apart as a kid, and my father used to say, it's really hard to appreciate perfection without a little bit of imperfection.
Sounds like it. That's awesome that you feel like your father can say that to you, because I feel like that's sometimes, especially if like you're like the disorganized kid, I feel like we can relate to, and like culturally too. I'm sure like parents that we put like, well, and we're like 90s kids, you know what I mean? Like like do right? That's kind of our life. But I think that's like such a beautiful sentiment, and it's so true because especially in the world of food, I absolutely respect that. You're going to hold yourself to really, and as you should, as that's what we would hold all chefs to that standard, all right, so the next one, you've lived, so many different chapters, from TV, opening restaurants, closing restaurants, travel, rebuilding. What has reinvention actually looked like for you, like behind the scenes? And what do you wish more women understood about giving themselves permission to evolve? And men, actually. Let's not really leave it to just women.
For me, reinvention has wherever it's been. And for me, it's something that I've done over and over and over and over and over again. And that's not a bad thing. It's not, I wasn't, when I had to go from chef to business owner or mentor or go from just having one restaurant to finding a way to cook across two restaurants. Reinvention is painful. It is violent within yourself. It is lonely. And I think that the reason that change or reinvention is so difficult for people is because they have a really hard time embracing the suck.
Yeah.
Whether even in the gym, you talk about reinvention.
Right.
Most people don't have it in them to embrace the difficulty that it takes to change themselves in a physical way, in a mental way.
Yes.
So for me personally, reinvention it's something that I am now very comfortable with.
Yeah.
But I had to be really uncomfortable being uncomfortable. There's a quote from Maya Angelou. And it's funny that you bring up women because I don't want to get it wrong, but it's something in the tune of, we celebrate the butterfly, but don't celebrate the work it takes for that transformation to happen.
Yes.
And I think that it's especially true. I think it's true for men and women.
Oh, absolutely. It's obviously it's celebrated and fully out there in the world when it comes to women, but obviously, yeah.
I mean, when the butterfly lands on your cup of coffee or on something, it's beautiful. You look at the colors, you look at whatever. Caterpillar crawls up your leg and you're like, "Ew, fuck, get off."
Right.
And I think that has been very true in my life and over and over again. People, they walk into the restaurant's beautiful and the glassware is perfect and the silverware is perfect and the service is great. Well, that took a lot of blood, sweat, tears, driving to and from Home Depot, selling a motorcycle so that I could make payroll for that week. I mean, you name it.
Yeah. Well, and the other piece of that, like the butterfly in this example, you'll always see that, but the transformation, like the cocoon, is not necessarily a visible thing that we'll see, because that's kind of because it naturally is going to happen behind the scenes, but it's going to happen in the dark, in the trees, in the hidden away, which is where it should be. It's not always, because it's not always public, because if you're doing it right, it's inner work.
Sure.
It's obviously exterior work too, but it's mostly inner work. So that's the part where we're fighting behind the scenes that no one really knows about, and that's fine. So that's why it's easy to celebrate the butterfly, because you see it, they're marching around, you're like, oh, that's great. But you're right, it really is hard to celebrate that. And I mean, and even from my own experience too, it's like, I just told my therapist, like, it was something I went through recently, and and it was just like you said, it was all consuming, and I had felt that low in a long time. It was very bad, and I was hurting a lot, and but I did kind of go into it with a sense of like, you know what, I'm gonna fully own this. Like, I own my mistakes, I own how I got here, blah 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 blah, and kind of that ownership, allowing it to everything to come in. Obviously, is what made it incredibly painful.
Sure.
It like literally felt like 1,000 knives, you know what I mean? Like literally being like kind of like burned at the stake, right? But because of that, like, and I fully expected to not only burn to the ground, but I didn't expect anything else to come. I thought that was it. Like, and then I don't know what happens after that. Sure. And what was crazy, like, within a week, like by that weekend or whatever, I was telling her, I was like, the relief that I felt, and I was like, I wasn't even expecting.
Sure.
I didn't know that I would have relief.
Sure.
I didn't know that I would step into clarity. I just assumed that like you hit there and then, you know what I mean? And I was like, obviously the cliche, like, Phoenix from the ashes kind of thing. But like, I think when you, like, at least for me in that moment, allowing the hard in,
sure,
actually allowed the burn to happen. This is going to sound kind of crazy. Faster.
Sure.
Get over faster. And to recover faster.
Sure.
So actually the weeks following that were some of the most clear, productive weeks I had in months.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, so you don't just completely fall apart. Like, I mean, yes, you do, but like there is some beauty in just letting, like, when you're open to it, obviously, doing it in a safe way, like, surrounding myself with the people that I love and support, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's a wild thing. It's a wild ride.
When I when it kind of all came undone for me, it was probably the darkest time I have felt in ever. I mean, I went from I want to say this the right way.
Yeah.
I People have this perception when you open businesses, you open restaurants, um, that there is this huge pot of money, and
I was just talking about this with somebody,
and that the person that they see on social media is like being driven in the back of limousines and flying private and whatever and what have you.
Right.
And they don't often realize that if you are your own brand and you are your own business, or you run your own business,
right,
you're operating at a net loss almost every single day, just trying to find a way to make it happen. And then for me, what made things worse, which I didn't realize how it would affect me, but it did, was when the court of public opinion took over, and then it became, things were being said about me that I couldn't wrap my mind around. I was being called a racist, and I was just the things that people say when you're in that situation.
Well, and on that public scale.
But that's why everybody's just not built for it.
Yeah.
For me, it was, I feel like, I don't know which way you lean religiously, but I am.
Yeah.
And I feel like God kind of had to take me here and then bring me here so that he could bring me back way past here.
Exactly.
I think that it strengthened me in a way that I didn't even know was possible.
Yeah.
This last year was tough.
Right.
And I figured, what's the hardest thing I can do right now? And the hardest thing I could do was pick up all my things and move to the place, the food of which I loved and built a career off of, where I didn't speak the language. So I packed up my knives and my stuff, and I went to Paris. And I picked up the first job I could find, and decided that I was just going to stay there for a while.
Yeah.
And it went well.
That's awesome. I mean, I know when you were like leaving, I was so sad, but I was like so very happy for you, because I kind of like feel it. Like your soul literally had a calling, and it was being called home in a way, like a little bit, you know what I mean? And I kind of love that for you, and especially after all of that. And and I'm excited to kind of see where that keeps growing and shaping you. You know what I mean? Because you don't just well, you said something earlier too, that like not everybody is meant for it, and I was like, looking again, I can't relate to you obviously being a chef and being in that industry, but to me, I was like, that's not a marker that whether you can or should be in that, in that ownership space or in that space again whatsoever. It just means that like you can do it differently next time. You know what I mean? Or however, whatever that looks like for you.
I read something that said when you start again, you don't start from zero, you start from experience, which is more than can be said for a lot of people.
Yeah. Exactly. Especially if you can be willing to embrace it and own it. You know what I mean? All right. So every chef has a flavor profile, right? Like whether it's bright, bold, comforting, simple, layered, whatever. If you think about your life through that same lens, what would you call your flavor profile of this season? I know it sounds really cliche, but yeah.
I know everybody expected me to say spicy. I'm not saying spicy. I would say layered. I've had so many, that's not really a flavor profile, but I'm going to use it anyway.
That works.
Layered. I've had so many experiences. I've lived so many lives, and there's a lot more to keep coming. So, like good lasagna.
I like that, because there's some comforting aspects of that.
Good shepherd's pie. It has all the right layers to it. There's textural layers. There's a little bit of acid. There's a little bit of sweet. There's a little bit of savory. So for me, I'm still building.
And that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Because I also feel like you're in a season right now. You know what I mean? Like we all are. We're all in different seasons, and sometimes, and you've been through so many transitions that you kind of get to be in this really cool, like, I don't know, exploration, really.
For sure. And I think, the best is definitely yet to come.
Yeah.
I feel better than I've ever felt. For as much as I loved those restaurants with everything in me and gave them my entire heart and soul.
Yeah.
I think I needed to stop a little bit for my own health. You know, I didn't forget how to cook.
No, absolutely.
And I'm just right now doing kind of whatever.
I love that. I love that, which is not many people can say that either. You know, it's like, so that's really cool. Okay, real quick. How did Bar Rescue come about?
The phone rang. I'm sure that there's some sort of, the phone rang. They said, hey, we were looking for some people to potentially host a handful of episodes. We see that, you've owned your own businesses for a long time. You started them on your own, yada, yada, yada. And we really resonate with the story. And I was pretty honest with them. I was like, guys, just so you know, things are going a little bit pear-shaped for me right now on my own end. And they said, well, then who better? Who better to have that perspective of what it feels like to be in that position.
Right.
And man, that experience, being able to really sort of commiserate. First of all, John Taffer is a smart, amazing, incredibly talented human being. So being able to be in that arena was amazing. But being able to really be able to commiserate with some of these bar owners, where I could literally feel their pain. Where I'm like, listen, I know how the stories ends, it really gave me a passion for the show, for the crew, that I wasn't expecting. We'll see what happens with me going back, but I really, that was a singular experience in my life.
That's cool. That's so cool. So what do you feel like is next for you right now? As you look down this next season.
Sure. Yeah. I've got a couple things in the works right now in terms of collaborations and partnerships. And for me, the most important thing is just to keep cooking. I feel like if you don't do it, you lose it. So I think as long as I'm cooking somewhere, I'm happy. I'm probably going to end up doing a little bit more traveling because having owned restaurants for however many years that I did, I was sort of chained at the stove for a little while.
No doubt.
So I'm going to take advantage of this time. My family's all getting a little bit older, so if I can spend a little bit of time with them, great. I've got a couple television ideas that I'm developing right now, so we'll see how things go.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're so excited to see what you keep doing. Obviously, we're going to keep staying in touch, whether you end up, on this coast or wherever. I'm grateful to explore your story, and I'm so glad to have had you here. And frankly, there's so many good metaphorical nuggets, if you will say, from today that I think, again, I feel like I personally resonated with so much of that. And I'm so glad to have obviously met you and your wonderful friend. And I'm excited to see what happens next for you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Mom Talk Maryland. If you loved it, leave a review, share it with a friend, or tag me at the.columbiamom on Instagram. I'd love to hear what you think. And don't forget to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Until next time, keep showing up, keep supporting local, and keep being the incredible mom, woman, human that you are.